Kia ora and welcome to Baha'i on Air. This is a very special episode in which we will hear from Maori Bahá'ís who were part of a group that represented the Baha'i community of New Zealand in Haifa, Israel, at the momentous dedication of the Terraces of the Shrine of the Bab. On May 23, 2001, 19 participants chosen from nearly every country in the world congregated at the base of Mount Carmel to formally open these spectacular Terraces of Light, which lead to the Shrine of the Bab, one of the most holy places for Baha'is around the world.
The Mount Carmel project was a project that included the building of 18 terraces, 9 below and 9 above the Shrine of the Bab. Terraces replete with beautiful gardens. They've been designated by the Israeli authorities as the 8th wonder of the world. It's a project that has been in effect for a decade, and this event marked the culmination of that project.
These gardens were constructed with the express purpose of beautifying the surroundings of the Shrine of the Bab. The Bab, one of the founders of the Baha'i faith, was executed by a firing squad in mid-19th century Persia. His remains were finally laid to rest on Mount Carmel, and the shrine constructed as a holy place of Baha'i pilgrimage at the faith's world center.
And his remains were secretly transported and eventually interred on the banks of Mount Carmel, thus fulfilling, as we understand it, the biblical prophecies of Isaiah, which state that in the last days the nations shall flow into the mountain of the Lord being Mount Carmel. It was interesting, the architect of the said project spoke of the terraces and the gardens and described the buildings on particularly the Ark Path, which is another aspect of the holy places on Mount Carmel. He described the buildings, which are wonderful Grecian-styled buildings, as being pavilions of the gardens and the terraces. So while the gardens and the terraces, perhaps a normal architectural terminology, would be an adjunct or a complement to buildings, it was in fact the way the architect described it. The gardens and the terraces were the main feature, and the buildings in fact were the complementary aspect of those wonder gardens.
That was such an amazing feeling, really, to know that I was going to be part of this momentous occasion in Israel. And when I got there, I guess I had a feeling that it was surreal, that it was a dream. And even when I was sort of standing inside the terraces and looking at the Shrine of the Bab, the picture was so perfect. The weather was incredibly hot and the days were very clear and the heat was very dry, so everything was quite still. It was like a snapshot. Every time I looked at something, everything was just so perfect.
I remember like stepping onto Mount Carmel, onto the mountain, and just having this feeling of reverence, yeah, that it just automatically came to me.
It's a real blend of East and West, and when I looked up, because I really love gardening is one of my passions, and so in the books that I've read, the holy books, I always get a sense of what is planted, and the cypress trees, I understand, are a symbol of where the Bab came from in Shiraz, and the cypress trees are just lined all the way up the mountain.
Standing in the shadow of the Shrine of the Bab was a very emotional experience for myself, and certainly looking up the terraces above the Shrine of the Bab and reminiscing the 16 years previous when I had been a pilgrim, and remembering the differences, you know, the transformation of the mountain. I mean, that was a really emotional time for me, and one that stands profoundly in my memory.
The gardens serve to prepare the visitor for the sacredness of the shrine and the remembrance of the Bab. The gardens of light, water, and natural beauty are a sharp contrast to the deprivation faced by the Bab during his imprisonment preceding his execution. They also serve as a reminder to the Baha'is of the transformative power of their faith.
Going into the shrine of the Bab and Abdul-Baha and being able to say prayers and meditate, and also down to Baji to the shrine of Baha'u'llah, saying prayers there too and meditating there. That was my highlight for me.
Why was it a highlight for you?
Well, because it was my first time there, and knowing that the Bab and Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha are the central figures of the Baha'i faith, and that I was in the shrine, praying with them. It was really special to me.
The 3,500 participants were gathered in this stadium at the foot of the terraces, and as the beginning time of the celebrations drew closer, there was certainly a hushed air of expectation. We were of course joined by perhaps 100 dignitaries from Haifa, and I guess from the Israeli government. The Universal House of Justice had commissioned some classical pieces of work to be composed in celebration of this event.
And now live from Haifa, Israel, the opening of the Terraces of the Shrine of the Bab, featuring the world premiere of Terraces of Light, an oratorio based on the Tablet of Carmel by Baha'u'llah, composed by Lasse Thoresen, and O Queen of Carmel, a cantata in 3 parts, composed by Tolib Shahidi.
At one stage there was this violin player who, with his son and daughter, were part of the composition. The fountains went on, and then the lights just flooded up the mountain, just so perfect, and it was to this beautiful, beautiful music.
Another memory I had from that evening was when we left, when the devotion program was over, and we were all coming out, and all the local people of Haifa were lined up down on both sides of the road, and they were waving to us, and they wanted to come over and shake hands with us and touch us.
There are 19 terraces in all, 9 above and 9 below the Shrine of the Bab. They rise a full kilometer from the base of Mount Carmel to the mountain's crest. Together with 2 new buildings here at the Faith's World Center, the construction of the project took more than 10 years to complete. It was funded entirely by contributions from the 5 million member Baha'i community. The new buildings were designed by Hossein Amanat, the gardens by Fariborz Sahba, who also served as the project's manager throughout its construction.
In our design, details are very important. The terraces, for example, are full of small details, very small details that maybe it will not be immediately noticed, but it adds a flavor, it adds fragrance, it touches the heart of, it makes us add to the story. For example, the trees from the house of the Bab on terrace number 9, or the color seasons that we have. We have a season, right now is red season. Then we have blue season, we have purple season. These together add flavor to the complex.
And I think they were from every country in the world. There was a large contingent of Indigenous people there, and perhaps more coloured people than white people, in fact.
Hello to the friends in New Zealand.
Where are you from?
I'm from Montserrat, the East Caribbean.
I'm from Samoa. I'm so happy to be part of this event.
I never will forget you.
It was sort of an indication to me of what paradise could be like. You know, surrounded with people of every nationality, from all walks of life, from all corners of the world basically, and there was this real sense of brotherhood, this sense of unity, this sense of affection and love for one another. So I guess that was a major highlight for me, was going across the world. You know, it's on the opposite side of the world from New Zealand, and feeling like I was at home with these people that I'd never met before. And the only connection that we had was that we were Baha'i. But such a special connection, because we believe in the unity of mankind, and I saw the evidence of, you know, our desire to create that. So it was a really special opportunity, and I know when I talk about it now with friends, and now that I've been back in New Zealand, it sort of dawns on me how important that event was for me as an individual, and for me as a Baha'i, for me as an Indigenous person.
And there were lots of French people from the Cameroon, Africa, who were all French speaking, but we had just had such a great time. It was just wonderful. I just felt that it was a glimpse of the possibility of unity, you know.
Certainly Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, places the indigenous races in an elevated position. So whereas historically indigenous people have been subjugated, in the Baha'i faith I believe we occupy perhaps not an elated position, but certainly one of equal footage, and in some cases we're given preferential treatment. I think this is to perhaps address the imbalance of the injustice that Indigenous people have suffered historically.
The Bab explained that his sole purpose was to prepare humanity for the coming of one greater than himself, one whose teachings would propel humanity through a global and peaceful development.
There was an Israeli army post not far from where we were, so you had people daily that just looked right through you, and then people who, you know, other Baha'is who, you know, just saw your beautiful spirit, or saw Baha'u'llah in each other. It was just fantastic. I loved it.
Hey everybody, it's great to be here. If you just look around, it's amazing how many different people there are and stuff. No, I don't want to do this, Max.
That's right. Who's the smiley guy?
Good on you, New Zealand, the best country in the whole world, and that's an Aussie telling you that. Beautiful place. I love the place.
I've always had pride in who I am as Māori Samoan Chinese person, with those that heritage sort of sits quite heavily on my shoulders sometimes. But when I was there, I really felt like being Indigenous has a special role, I think, and a special place to teach people certain things. And I saw it there. I saw sort of the humility of Indigenous people and the way that we're a bit shy to come forward. We're not as assertive on certain at certain things. But there we were encouraged to be sort of like in the fore, and that was really quite humbling.
The Holy Land, at one time a land bridge between the earliest civilizations, occupies an area of less than 8,000 square miles. To the north is Haifa, the mountain city by the sea, the spiritual and administrative world centre of the Baha'i faith. And running inland for almost 16 miles, the range of hills that comprise Mount Carmel.
We have had to close a lot of roads in order to prepare this big event, and I must tell you that I'm so proud on my people, because they are reacting so nicely with such a relaxed atmosphere.
The Mayor of Haifa, he spoke to us and welcomed us on our arrival at the Haifa Convention Centre. His attitude to the Baha'is was so welcoming. There was a sign across the street in Lower Haifa to welcome to the Baha'is of the world. That was really wonderful. And at the opening ceremony, it was awesome to be part of something that included government representation.
Since I remember myself, and many, many years before, Haifa and the Baha'i community went together. I'm not sure that we could see Haifa as a city as it is today without the Baha'i World Center and, of course, the magnificent, the beautiful and the wonderful hanging gardens in the center of the city.
Music has a way of connecting hearts and bringing people together. And I saw that Hedda and Sharon and Patrick, they've all talked about the different groups that were there and performed. And really, they were just some of the groups, it was just so uplifting. Some of the music was just really energising.
The program at that time included more of the Congolese choir, which is always an uplifting experience of listening to them, and other Indigenous people who sang and chanted in their own tongues.
Mere manas ko prakashit kar de, मैं अपने समस्त कार्यकलापों को
и праздных мечтаний силою могущества Господа твоего, Вседержителя.
Mes témoins, ô peuple, je suis venu à vous, porteur d'une révélation du Seigneur votre Dieu, le Seigneur de vos pères. N'attachez pas vos regards sur les choses.
I could go on about the programs, I could sort of talk endlessly about them, because the programs were just the ultimate, I think. I've never seen anything like it, and I probably will never see anything like it in my lifetime.
Come and see.
think in some ways music is a way of playing and is a way of worshipping, and that's how I felt when some of the performers sang. All the performances in some way or other, to me, was a form of worship.
Verily I say, immensely exalted is this day above the day of the apostles of old. Nay, immeasurable is the difference. You are the witnesses of the dawn of the promised day of God. You are the partakers of the mystic chalice of his revelation.
That morning we ascended the stairs of the terraces that had just been opened, so there were 3,700 of us. At the front were the Universal House of Justice. I talked about it later with friends, and I can't even remember putting my feet on the steps because it was so ethereal. It was like flying. That's how I felt, you know. And I remember at one stage turning and looking back and just thinking, this is part of prophecy, this is part of history, and I just wanted the scene to be etched in my memory forever and ever. It was very, very beautiful.
When we actually ascended the terraces, and in fact it was only the first 9 terraces from the bottom of the mountain to the Shrine of the Barb, there were many incapacitated and sick people that participated in that ascension that were being aided and assisted by other members. And one image that remains sharply focused in my mind is of a young boy, perhaps 18, who looked perhaps as if he was a cerebral palsy victim with crutches, 2 sticks and legs which didn't function, and he was being aided up the steps of the terraces, you know, and just his determination, his back drenched with sweat and his shirt sticking to him. I mean, that image remains in my mind foremostly too. You know, just the efforts that people exerted to actually ascend those terraces.
Yeah, when I was walking up the terraces, I was thinking about the Barb and the history of the Barb, and thinking about his followers, the Baha'is, and all the persecutions and that they went through, and just for this day, for this thing to happen, and for the beautiful shrine of the Barb, and also the art buildings on Mount Carmel, and also the just now and again I'll sort of turn and look at the friends and just look at their faces, and some of the older adults like they were struggling because it was quite a hot day. I think it was over 30 degrees, and they looked like they were struggling to climb the terraces. So I asked them if they needed any help. They said to me, "No, I'm all right. Baha'u'llah's pushing me."
The Baha'is were exiting after the inauguration program. I recall a group of Christians coming towards us and handing out pamphlets and saying to the Baha'is that they needed to read this material because they needed to, this would be the way to save their souls. This would be redemption and a way to get to heaven. And one of the Baha'is that I was walking with turned around and handed back the material and just said, "We've come from heaven." And he said it in a really polite way, and I really felt that too. I think while I was there, that was sort of an indication to me of what paradise could be like. Surrounded with people of every nationality, from all walks of life, from all corners of the world basically, and there was this real sense of brotherhood, this sense of unity, this sense of affection and love for one another.
With the use of ornamentation and now water as well, and these beautiful fountains, it just is spectacular. And especially in its contrast to like the rest of the mountain, which in effect is a rocky terrain, and quite obviously the contrast can be seen, from afar, from a distance. So, the Shrine of the Barb is in effect adorned by this green verdure that extends for 1 kilometre from the foot of the mountain to its zenith. Indeed, a wondrous spectacle.
By day, the terraces are a sea of color. At night, 2,000 lights memorialize the suffering of the Bab in the dark prison cell of Maku. This entire mountain now beckons humanity to investigate the spirit which emanates from this beauteous place. Climbing the terraces to the Shrine of the Bab cannot but invoke reverence and respect for the one referred to as the primal point of the new revelation. This shrine, housing the sacred remains of the Bab, is a place of pilgrimage, the attainment of which is longed for by every Baha'i.
We hope you have enjoyed this first installment in our 2-part series on the official opening and dedication of the Terraces of the Shrine of the Bab in Haifa, Israel. Please tune in again next time for the conclusion of this spectacular event. In the meantime, if you would like more information about the Baha'i Faith, please contact us by checking out our website www.baha'i.org.nz.